Welcome back. This is Breezing Through, and I'm Emily. So today I'm wrapping up the section of my son's room that I've been working on the last few weeks. So if you've watched some of the other videos, you've seen that I have done the slide and I've been working on the floating bookshelves. Well, today I'm walking you through the entire project for this section. So to back up a second, I'm taking my son's room, which is on the third floor of our house, and I am making I'm making a bed for him, but I'm also making this big play space because this room has vaulted ceilings that go up to like 13, 14 feet. And I want to create an inside play space for my kids and specifically my son because this is his room. So today I'm going to show you the project of doing the platform for the slide, as well as the ladder and the reading nook underneath it. You may notice in these videos that there is a bandage on my finger. I got a splinter of wood underneath my fingernail and it ended up getting infected. I did get it treated. It's all healing now. This is just protective at this point because the new skin's coming through, but all good, all good there. It was so fun to do this project. I'm excited for the next phase of this project, which I'll talk about at the end, because we're getting close-ish to the end of this. So let's get started. I started off with the frame for the platform using 2x4s. This is a 48-inch by 48-inch platform. I wanted to make it easy on myself so that I could just use one sheet of 48 by 48-inch plywood underlayment for the top because I'm then going to put flooring on top of that. I attached the boards to each other using 3-inch wood screws. I did 2 for each end of each board just to make sure they weren't going anywhere. I did not paint this because this is all going to be covered by the time the entire project's done. To support this frame for the platform, I'm doing 2 4x4 posts and a 2x4 post. I did paint those, however, because they will be exposed. I did 2 coats of primer and then 2 coats of Benjamin Moore Regal in the color Sea to Shining Sea. I primed all 4 sides, but I only painted 3 sides this color because one side of each board was going to be covered. Then I got started attaching it to the wall. So I measured how far it was going to be from the back wall to where I needed to cut in the baseboard. So it was 48 inches. I cut enough room for the 4x4 post, and then I added an additional 1/2 inch on the far side because there's going to be a piece of plywood as the face for this area. So I needed to account for that as well. Once that piece was in, I then secured the second 4x4 post to the platform that I had made, lifted that up and secured the platform to the first post, which was attached to the wall, and then secured the platform along both walls to the studs in the wall, which I had previously marked. So now this platform has supports in the front and it is secure very, very well to the studs along the walls. And then I added the additional 2x4 piece to the front between the 2 4x4 posts because this is going to act as additional support for the plywood that's going to be here and this whole area past the hang test, as you can tell. So now it's time to move on. So working on the plywood that's going to cover that area, this is going to be where the slide is attached along with the ladder that I'm making for the slide. So I just used my jigsaw and I cut out these oblong ovals with the curved ends. I then sanded them down to get them nice and smooth. I then primed them with 2 coats of paint. You saw in the last clip that I'd already primed one side of this piece of plywood, but the other side needed to be primed because I'm going to paint both sides of it. I did wait to paint the color on it because I wanted to wait until it was installed to do that. Looking back though, I would have just painted it first and then installed it. I did not need to wait to paint it. But once the primer was dry, I then installed it. I just used my 2-inch wood screws and secured it to the 4x4s and the 2x4, and then I used wood filler to fill up those holes. Then it was time to work on the slide. I've done a separate video on both the slide and the floating shelves that I'm doing for the reading nook, so I'm not going to go into as much detail about these. You can go back and watch those other videos and look at those other blog posts if you're really interested in all of the details for these, but I did use wood and melamine to make the slide. I attached the wood pieces to the melamine after I ran them through my router table to get a nice inset for the melamine to rest in. I did paint the wood sides of the slide. I'm again using Benjamin Moore Regal in the color Honeybell. And again, this is 2 coats of paint. It is always best to do 2 coats of primer and then 2 coats of paint. You're going to get the best finish. And I found with this Benjamin Moore Regal that it gives a really, really nice finish at the end, and it is super easy to clean, especially in the eggshell finish. So once those boards were ready, I attached them to the melamine using 2-inch screws. I did pre-drill into the panels and then into the melamine so that I didn't have any cracks or any splitting. I originally was not going to raise the slide up at all. I thought it was a pretty good angle, but once I installed it, I realized that it did need to be lifted up about 12 inches. So I did build a 12-inch platform to raise it up a little bit, and then I installed the slide onto the platform using these brackets. I just bent them into place, and I did the same thing when I attached it to the platform at the bottom. Then I got started on the reading nook, and I started off with the floating shelves. Again, there's a separate video and post about this if you want to get all of the details. I made 8 floating shelves. 4 of them are 36 inches long and 4 of them are 15 inches long. I didn't want to do floating shelves for the entire reading nook, so all 3 sides, because I wanted there to be a spot for the kids to sit. And I'm going to be adding probably the nugget to that spot so that there is somewhere that's comfy and nice for the kids to sit. And I want the nugget to be up there anyway. So I cut the boards down and I used, again, Benjamin Moore Regal Sea to Shining Sea to paint them. And then I attached the boards to each other to make these shelves. And then to attach them to the walls in the reading nook, I used these other brackets that I found at my local Ace Hardware. So I first attached the brackets to the actual shelves so that they were all ready to go. And then I prepped the actual reading nook because this hadn't been painted yet. Using the same Benjamin Moore Regal Sea to Shining Sea, I painted the inside of this space. So the other side of that piece of plywood and then the 2 walls, I created a nice line with some painter's tape because I really want it to be obvious where this reading nook is. After that paint was dry, I then installed the shelves. So I already had the brackets all ready to go, and I measured where I was going to install each shelf. Because of placement and where the studs are, I wasn't able to secure them to studs on the walls, and so I used dry wall anchors, pre-drilled for those, put those into the wall, and then screwed the brackets into the drywall anchors. And then I loaded those shelves up with books. Then it was time to paint the outside of the reading nook. Again, because this is its own color, I wanted the outside of this piece of plywood to be the same color as the reading nook, just to differentiate the spaces. And so that's also where the ladder is going. I did decide to also cover the frame that I built for the slide platform with another piece of plywood underlayment that I painted. It just gives everything a nice finished look. I did realize that when I was trying to install that piece of plywood as the ceiling that I needed to take the shelves out because they were in the way. So those had to come out. Then I was able to put that piece of plywood up as the ceiling, and then I had to reinstall the shelves. Lastly, it was time for the railing, which I'm sure my kids are devastated about because my kids loved hanging out on top of this platform and jumping off of it. We have been keeping the guest mattress right at the bottom of this platform so that they can easily jump off it, and they're always jumping to one of us. So not a big deal, definitely safe, but I wasn't going to leave a platform that's more than 5 feet up in the air without any kind of railing. I'm using a 2x4 post up against the wall and then 4x4 posts along the rest of the platform. I did attach these handles to the 2 railings above the ladder, and I added additional handholds along the ladder just to make it a little bit easier to go up and down. I'll do a separate video on those and attaching those because I learned a lot doing that. I did this little mini railing that only has 3 rails on it as my experiment for railing because there's going to be a lot more railing in this project. It's actually the next phase. And so I was testing it out to see how it would look and how I could make it work. And I think I made it work okay, but I will talk about that more in the next phase of this project. So just hold on tight for that. Here it is, completely done. I'm really happy with it. The kids love hanging out up there. My son is constantly throwing stuff up there. So what do you think? I love it. The kids absolutely love it. The kids like to just jump off the edge of it, specifically my son. I was really worried he was gonna be mad at me when I put up the railing. He was not, surprisingly. I have made some design changes for the next phase because he clearly loves to jump off of this and he's seeking that sensory input. So there are going to be some design changes from my original plan. But so that I'm super excited about it. So the next phase of this project is the bridge that I'm building that's going to connect his bed and the slide platform in the reading nook. And then there's going to be railing along all of that. And then the next phase after that, so 2 more phases, will be a like a loft above his bed. It's a lot to do, a lot of railing to do. I'm not sure I'm thrilled that I decided that I'm going to do all of that railing. But I think I have it figured out and I've got a plan, and that'll be in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully next week you will see a video on finishing up an epoxy resin table that I've been working on since I started working on the epoxy resin trays that I shared a few months ago. That has been quite the learning experience. It has been a long and arduous process, and I'm so over it. And I probably need to take a break from epoxy resin because I'm just so incredibly over it at this point. So look out for that. Again, hopefully next week. every time I think I'm going to be ready, something goes wrong and I have to pivot and I have to do something different with this table. The number of times I've had to redo this table is driving me insane. Anyway, I'll talk about that more when I finally get that post done and I'm done with the table. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you can see more videos like this in your feed, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.